I guess the thing that I tested myself on, because it's easy when you're in the community to say, on the one hand I think this, on the other hand I think that. But in Parliament the crunch comes and you have to sit one side of the chamber or the other, which I had to do on euthanasia and on stem cells. And I think the thing that I put the test to myself was, if one of my nieces or nephews, if I had responsibility for them, I don't have children of my own, but if I had responsibility for them, and there was a treatment available from embryonic stem cells, would I deny them that treatment or not, on an ethical basis? And I couldn't say I would. I thought that I didn't feel that an embryo had the same status as a sentient human being, a fully fledged human being. A lot of research now, with the advent of the internet, is done in virtual institutions. For example, a centre may be working across 3 or 4 universities, across 3 or 4 states, and it'd be impossible if somebody was liable for a very severe penalty, say 15 years in jail in one state, and not liable or a shorter term in another state. So it was important to harmonise it. The former Health Minister, Michael Waldridge, asked the Australian Health Ethics Commission, or Committee I think it was called, to look into this and to give him some advice, because we'd already had an Australian researcher, who's now here at the Australian Stem Cell Centre, discover mouse embryonic stem cells. And when the committee reported, human embryonic stem cells had been developed in America. And their recommendation was that this should be regulated. So I then came on as Health Minister and inherited this, and we took the legislation through to regulate human embryonic stem cell research, and the states came on board and had complementary legislation, so we harmonised the legislation across Australia because we felt it was important. The Lockhart review gave 48 recommendations. The then Health Minister advised Cabinet, and Cabinet said they weren't of a mind to consider the review. And I was quite shocked by that decision and decided, as a backbencher, because I still had my term in the Senate, that I would develop a private member's bill. And I must say, John Howard gave me enormous support with help with writing the legislation. It was a very long bill. It was only the 10th private member's bill ever to get through the Senate. And I had that help, even though he voted against the bill. He was big enough to give me that support. And those recommendations were about somatic cell nuclear transfer, which had been put on hold in 2001, a moratorium on it, till we knew more about it. I believe that it would be important that those recommendations at least be discussed in Parliament. That was my objective. The bill got through with one vote in the Senate and quite clearly through the House of Reps. And so the recommendations of the Lockhart review were implemented, and there's to be another review, I think it's due in 2009 at the end of this year. I had to get on top of stuff I wasn't fully aware of, legislative stuff, biological. I'm not a biologist, I'm a psychologist. But I learnt a lot in the whole process, but I also found some of the irrational arguments that people were putting distressing. It's okay for people to have another view, but when they actually put arguments that are totally wrong, that are not based in science, that are irrational, then it's very hard to argue with them and to argue against. And I think that was the thing I found most disappointing, that people didn't engage in rational argument based on scientific facts. Sometimes it was very irrational. And to say that we were going to develop a rabbit man and arguments like that, I felt like Jenner when he was injecting cowpox into people, and he was accused that he was going to create people with horns and a tail. That was the sort of level we got to, which I think was ridiculous. One of the heartening things was that after that legislation went through, the states then one by one harmonised their legislation again, and now we have a framework which I think is one of the best in the world in terms of making sure we don't allow human cloning, that we don't permit the creation of embryos solely for the purpose of research, that they're only embryos that have been used in reproductive technology and IVF. And I think it allows scientists to do the work they need to do, but it controls it in a way that the community can say, we know how far we're going to let them go, and if there's any other decision for research to go in another direction, then of course it'll have to come back to Parliament. It was a very interesting and challenging experience. I'm not sure I'm right, but I think I did the right thing in making sure that that Lockhart review, done by 6 eminent Australians, at least had its day in Parliament.